really, really pleased to have you here. So this is Lord Simon Jacobs from Professional Weirdos. So welcome.
Thank Jackie. I really appreciate it, and you introduced me in the proper sense, which I appreciate as well.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that is the place to start then, Lord
Sure.
Simon. Please let us know a little bit about how the Lord came to be.
Sure. So it's not as grand as it sounds. It's more loopholey. As a lot of people once they listen to this podcast will find out about me. I quite like a loophole. When I was about 16, which was about 12 years ago. So if you're any good at maths, you work out how old I am. I was amongst friends who were looking at universities and UCAS points and various other things like that. And university was sort of on the periphery, but wasn't really a major thing for me. And so I was looking for ways to get a degree without actually going to university, or various ways of getting things without going to university. So I went on the old Google and started searching and found that you could get a degree in aeronautical engineering at Kazakhstan University or something for about $4,000, and you could actually buy a doctorate from various other weird and wonderful places. At the time, I didn't have $4,000 to waste on a fake degree, but through the wonders of the internet shame spiral, I came across the Lord of the Manor, which basically you can buy small plots of land on an old manor land, and you effectively become the Lord of the Manor. And that was about £20 at the time. And I remember buying it, running down to my parents and saying, I'm going to be a lord. And they gave me that standard look like, oh, no, not this again, Simon. You're always doing stupid things. And my dad, I told them that you could put it on your driving license, you put it on your bank account statements. It is technically an official document. And my dad went, just don't put it on your driving license. And that's the best piece of advice he's ever given me, because I've been pulled over a couple of times, not for anything particularly reckless. Being a young driver and having a reasonably nice car gets you into trouble sometimes. And I could just imagine them pulling you over and looking at the license going, oh, Lord Jacobs, is it? You're coming with us. So yeah, that's so I'm pleased I never put it on my driving license, but I have used it to my advantage on several occasions.
Oh, give us an example. Where is it helped?
So again, it was around this. It was shortly after I bought it, and I was on a youth trip to New York. It was can't quite remember what the youth trip was, but the last day of the trip, we were given like a treasure hunt style challenge to go around and do various weird and wonderful things in New York. So things like bump into a celebrity. So apparently the streets there are crawling with celebrities. Talk your way into a hotel suite. Get pictures of many different Starbucks as possible. Busk in Times Square and various other things. And so myself and 7 other friends, all of which were from London, so I was the token northerner, had done all the various different things other than busk in Times Square. So we stood where, do you know where the stairs that lead to nowhere are in Times Square?
Yeah. I was there a couple of Christmases ago.
There you go. So we stood around there with our caps in our hand, belting out Wonderwall by Oasis. So me being the token northerner really gave it the beans, and we were getting some like dimes and stuff, mainly out of pity, I think. But we were enjoying ourselves. All of a sudden, though, I felt a massive hand on my shoulder, and I look up, and there's this. He looked massive at the time. I'm going to say he was about 8 foot. New York cop just looking down at me. And at which point I turned to my friends and they had run away. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this or not, but for the sake of it, they cleared off. And then this cop just decided to go in at me and say, started shouting, went, you're not allowed to busk in Times Square. It's against the rules. You're going to, I could feel myself welling up and all my orifices opening. At which point I think he must have seen that I was on like the verge of a breakdown. And he relented slightly. And at that point I sort of heard like an outside voice, my own voice, going, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I'm from England. I wouldn't have done it if I knew. I'm actually a lord." And you kind of feel like, "Oh no, I've not said that." And my friends must have seen in the distance that I've slightly quelled the situation. He's slightly calmer, and they came over and they went, "Show him the card. Show him the card," meaning my bank card. I was like, "Oh God!" So I opened up my wallet and showed him the bank card. Gave it to him, and he kind of looked me up and down, looked back at the card, looked back at me, and then he bowed. And and he said, he looked properly embarrassed. He said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were a lord. various other things. He was telling me why he was in such a bad mood and things, and he asked for pictures with my friends and me, and then he said, don't busk in Times Square next time. It was an honor to meet you, and off he walked. And I thought, oh my God, I've just escaped jail, I've escaped being deported. And I thought my parents were going to have to be calling and everything. And only recently did someone point out to me that he probably went home and said, I almost caused an international incident today. Thinking, that he'd met this lord and various other things. And that was actually one of the best lordship experience that I had, the most extreme version, at least, the most extreme interaction, but it was a good one.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure he dined out on that for
exactly.
Even to this day, he probably still tells that story. Brilliant. But you've reminded me, actually, I've got two Lord connections, actually. Mm-hmm. My dad's brother, my uncle, actually changed his name by deed poll to Lord.
I love it.
And yeah, he was quite a character. He's gone now, but he actually wore the cravat and the monocle as well. So he was quite a character. And then my sister actually bought my dad a plot of land,
right,
somewhere in Scotland. I suppose my dad must be entitled to somewhere. But I'm going to tell him that story, and perhaps he'll use it from.
No, I mean, genuinely, people get bought it as presents. It is something silly in inverted commas. It's a bit of a stocking filler. But if you embrace it, if you really go for it, things can happen. I've genuinely had hotel upgrades, flight upgrades, free drinks, and it's not through pushing it. It's the fact that I've booked it under the name Lord Jacobs, or I've handed over my card with Lord Jacobs on it, and they go, "Oh, here you go then." So definitely embrace it.
Does that mean I could be a lady? Could I buy a?
Yeah, you can buy a ladyship.
I couldn't buy a damehood, could I? I'd have to be
No. So I think you can buy Duke, actually. I'm not sure what loophole that is, but Lady and Lordship are the easiest ones to get.
A Duchess. I could be Duchess.
Duchess, yes, exactly. Yeah, that's a good name, actually. I think that would work.
Yeah, Duchess. Yeah. I like that.
Duchess Goddard. That sounds really good, actually.
I'm going to look that up. It'd be great to know how you got to where you are now. I mean, one of my things is when I look back at where I've come from and what I studied, and I studied in fashion, and I've ended up going like this and ended up here. Yeah. So I wonder if there's anything like that in your career ladder. I like to call it a jungle gym. How did you get to where you are today?
It's funny because I completely agree in terms of I would call mine a Scribble career. A Scribble experience. And I was watching a documentary. Actually, it's one of your future guests, Ash, who did the animation of a guy called James Altucher, quite a well-known inventor in America, an investor and stuff. And in his documentary, he talks about all these people who are in high up positions, and people think that they did the standard career ladder, to become CEO. But actually, the reality is that they'll have Scribble careers as well, because that's how you get there. That's how you get those opportunities. So to answer your question, my background, how I came to be, a professional weirdo, I'll try and keep it short and snappy. So started my first business, inverted commas, when I was about 16. At that point, I was looking for my first car. All these things sort of happened when I was around 16, must have been when I was coming out my shell slightly. And there was no real advice online at the time. And so, there's just Jeremy Clarkson shouting you to buy a big Volvo or a Lamborghini. So I thought, all right, well, I'll go through the experience of getting my first car and I'll write about it. So I started a blog called The Third Nipple, for no reason other than it made me laugh. And the blog kind of snowballed and became like a gossip column almost for the school. So it was around the days when Facebook was bubbling, but hadn't quite taken off yet. So it was prime time for people to share stuff online there. And it eventually got shut down because the headmaster, found out there was some less than favorable things about teachers on there. And I was still quite shy at that time. So, I mean, maybe slightly younger me would have probably broken down and had a cry about, being collared by the headmaster. But actually, I recognized that I quite liked the notoriety of it. I quite liked the rocking of the boat. So then after that, I went to study international business at Nottingham Trent University. My thoughts at those times were that I would become a high-flying management consultant, here, there, and everywhere internationally. Didn't turn out to be the case. The first year of the course was basically a repeat of A-level business, which meant that I was pretty bored. So I just threw myself into extracurricular activities, literally any society that I could find, and then also a lot of going out and getting drunk. But something that I wanted to do when I went to university was write for the university magazine. But the year that I got there, they stopped printing. So I took it upon myself in that summer to start one of my own. So I came up with the brand name You Need to Know. So UNI number 2 KNOW, play on words, You Need to Know. And thought, right, well, based on the vast amount of experience I have from writing a blog, I can do publishing now. So sent out an email to some English language students, design students, and said, I'm starting this thing. Would you be interested in getting involved? And I booked a room for about 5 people, and about 50 people turned up. So I was like, oh, I must be onto something then.
Yeah.
And basically from there, we designed the magazine. We came up with what it was going to look like, what it was going to be. And then the week after, I went out and sold advertising to local businesses, which was the worst week of my life. Absolutely hated it, but managed to sell enough to be able to print the first edition. So I had some fun along the way there. We can come back to that. You know, there's some really fun stories. Well, at least I think they're fun. But the magazine kind of snowballed. I pitched for like a Dragon's Den style competition in Nottingham with the city council, won a grant there, and one of the dragons on the panel wanted to invest further independently of the panel. And I was working with someone else at the time as well. So the 3 of us formed a group called the Uni 2 group. And so we set up an estate agency, a travel company, an events company, all under the Uni 2 brand, with the magazine being the Trojan horse effectively. So we were able to get into students, unlike other businesses. And we effectively became one of, if not the best student estate agent in Nottingham almost overnight, because the other estate agents were professional lets and did a bit of student, whereas we were purely student and could get rid of our flats and houses really quickly. And then somewhere along the way, Microsoft got involved with us. They wanted some young companies to work with them to develop some apps to go onto their new operating system. Long story short there, they gave us a bit of money, but not enough to develop the apps. So we raised further investment, about £250,000. We ended up spaffing all of that up the wall on an app that never ended up working. So that was all fun and games. We ended up dialing stuff back and concentrating on the cash cow of the business, which was the rent side. And at that point, it was about three years in, I wasn't that interested in that side of things. And my business partners at that point just wanted a big business in Nottingham, which was fine. It was great. But for me, I wanted a UK-wide brand, and I had bigger visions. So I decided to step back at that point. And then somewhere along those lines, I graduated, much to the behest of my university, which we can get into again. And at that point, I wanted to see where I was in the job market. So I thought marketing was my thing. I'd had this business. I'd had wonderful experiences, whether or not, quote unquote, they've been successful. I had this experience under my belt. And so I sent my CVs out to marketing companies thinking I'd be snapped to immediately. This young 21-year-old with a massive ego. Didn't hear anything back, and kind of had a moment to myself where I thought, okay, well, what do I do now? And I thought, well, companies probably want to know, A, that you can market yourself if you're applying to marketing companies, and B, at least before COVID, what it'd be like to have you in the office with them. And so I decided to get some face masks on myself printed, and have my CV printed on the back of them, and basically said, this is it, you can imagine having me in the office with you. And at the time, that was a novel idea. Loads of people are doing these kind of things now, but at the time it was a bit novel, and got quite a few calls and emails on the back of that. At which point my ego got even bigger, and I decided that I could do it myself. I could do marketing consultancy. So I started a marketing consultancy business that had another twist. So with my university business, we worked with marketing companies in the past that were really good, but weren't that interested in the business, in the sense that theoretically we were a fast-growing startup, and we'd offered them equity shares and revenue shares in the past, but they weren't interested. So now I had the opportunity to offer that myself. And so that did quite well for about 9 months, got a few clients, won a few small time awards, and then eventually got hired by Camelot, the lottery company, in London. So I was hired on the premise of being young and having an interesting background. And I was hired alongside about 15 other young people, and we were injected into the business to bring in some youth. And so for about 2 months, we were just allowed to not go crazy, but we were allowed to, bob around and, be interesting and quirky and youthful and stuff. And me being me, stood out again, doing things differently and a bit weird, and eventually got made brand manager. So I was told I'd be looking after TV campaigns, marketing campaigns, all the kind of exciting stuff you dream of as a marketer. Unfortunately, the reality was that all the creative stuff was done out of house by big agencies. And I was a glorified account manager, and had to get up really early to do reports for the C-suite. And it wasn't said in black and white, but the feeling was that all the stuff that I'd done in order to get the job in the first place, I was no longer really encouraged to do or be, which was a shame. And so after about 6 months, I decided to leave, sold my shares of my university company to my business partner, which kept me afloat for a bit. And then we're getting to the end now. And then during a conversation with a friend of mine, what I should do next, she kind of leant back and said, Simon, you're a bit weird. I went, what? I said, if you look back at all the weird and wonderful stuff that you've done, they're the reasons for your success. Your success is. And that was kind of a eureka moment in the sense that, okay, I can resonate with that. But I wanted to find out a bit more about myself. And eventually, very, very long story short, I came up with the idea of Professional Weirdos, which is effectively a creativity training company for companies to help their employees reconnect with that creativity and ultimately utilize it within business. So what I discovered is a lot of people experience the same thing that I did. They get hired on the basis of their wonderful experience, their personality, etc. But about 3 months in, they lose that to the company culture. So that's a shame. So that's me in a really long-winded nutshell.
Wow. No, that is absolutely amazing. I mean, you just said you've done so much in such a short space of time, and it's made me think, because I was talking to Ash about, I mean, what I'd love to do with the podcast maybe next year is to talk to people like yourself and Ash about how young people going through college and university, how they can use their creativity and this kind of weirdness to actually forge careers, because it's not stuff that's taught at school, and kids don't realize that actually what makes them happy and what they enjoy doing, they could actually make a career of.
100%.
There's
100%.
loads of lots of creative industries out there, and lots of opportunities to make your own way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk to a lot of people about this naturally because of the title. And what I say is, the generation that's currently going through university and the generation after them that's about to go to university, we don't know what the jobs are going to look like in the future. When no one knew that COVID was coming, so we don't know what the world's going to look like. Full stop. But you can have a rough guess and say that AI, artificial intelligence, is going to take over to some extent. So a lot of jobs are going to be replaced. So the human element, the creativity element, is going to be vital if you're going to want to be employed. So absolutely, it should be taught, what it looks like in terms of the education side of things. But it needs to be taught to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe that's something that is going to come out of this, is the fact that we're all doing so much more online now, that it's innovation, isn't it? It's being put into this kind of bubble where we can't do anything but work out how we're going to get out of it and how
exactly
it's going to get changed. So I think that is something that will come out of that. I mean, I was watching something, you were talking about the methodology behind Professional Weirdos and stuff, and I heard you mention Ken Robinson, who is a big I'm a big fan of dear old Ken, and and what he was saying about creativities in schools, and I do think there's definitely something there. It's been stripped away so much over the last few years. So in terms of creativity, what's your definition then of creativity?
I mean, I've kind of stolen the term. It's one that I found that really resonated with stuff that I talk about. And for me, creativity is bringing two pre-existing ideas together to create a new one. That for me is what creativity is, and you can apply that to everything. So it could be an example of beer pong, which is table tennis with drinking. That's two ideas coming together. But you can also apply it to a baby learning to walk. They'll have watched the people around them get up and stand on their two legs, and then it's also the muscle memory, bringing those two things together. So that's why, and I think we'll probably go on to it later, that's why I think anyone who says they're not creative isn't telling the truth, because you are being creative. Every time that you do something that's slightly new, you have a new idea, a new way of doing things, that's creativity, full stop. You're bringing those two things together. Of course, it's a very simplified term. When you come up with a big idea, it's not just one thing and another thing, it's a whole conglomeration of your life experiences. But it is fundamentally two pre-existing ideas coming together to form a new one.
Yeah. And how do you, when you go into the sort of the corporate world, how do they perceive that? How do they sort of take that idea on board? I mean, are they open-minded in that way?
Oh, that's a really good question. There is kind of a split in the room, and I'm, well aware and well adapted to that now. You got the people who are well up for it, and that's great, you know, brilliant, you know, and you see them smiling, you see them getting involved. And I would say that those people, they don't really need what I do. Perhaps it's an example of, you know, the company admitting that they want them to do more of it, which is great. And if I can give them some stimuli, great. The people that really need the stuff that I sort of talk about are the ones that sort of roll their eyes at the back and sort of don't listen in and feel as if they've been pushed to go there. And so it's my role to get them interacting and, you know, bring it down to their level, basically. And for the most part, my end goal for those people is to move them an inch. You know, I would be naive if I went in thinking that I'm going to change their lives, I'm going to change the way they do things, but just to think slightly different. And a lot of them probably won't admit to it even. You know, they won't even realize when they do something different. They're sat at their desk. But it's just that second thought where they think, oh, I could do this a bit differently, or maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. And I mean, one of the pieces in the methodology, it's called challenging the status quo. And that sounds really grandiose and really big. And I try to break it down to really small things. And I say, okay, well, what's one thing that annoys you in the office? What's one thing that annoys you about your life or in work? And someone said to me that they had a fire extinguisher on the inside of their desk that they knocked their leg on every day. And I went, well, why don't you move it? And he said, well, it's screwed in. I thought, bring a screwdriver and undo it and move it somewhere else. And he's like, I'd never thought of it. You know, and it's like, you know, to say it changed his life is a bit much, but it changed his life in the sense that he doesn't knock his leg against it anymore. It changed his life in the sense that he'd never thought about taking a step back, quite literally and figuratively, to think, okay, well, I could do something differently. And then it's changed his mindset in terms of, okay, well, what's the smallest version I can do in terms of changing and challenging the status quo? So that's a big piece for me, in the sense that, you know, it sounds all big and amazing, talk about creativity and, you know, bring this into the world. And it would be great if you could have massive impact, but it has to start somewhere, it has to start small. So it's the small steps that I try. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah,
in how, yeah.
I have worked with some software designers who obviously aren't customer facing, and the whole idea was to get them to think about how their customers perceive things. Obviously they're busy sort of creating their software, but they don't actually think of where it's going to end up. So I was brought in to do some sort of improvising with them, really,
right?
And, you know, sort of doing stuff like that. And I was gobsmacked that actually, as you say, when you turn up, you get half of them that are sitting in the back, and you can feel them trying to push you away. But actually, once they got into it, and once they just let themselves go, it's giving people permission, isn't it? Do you find that if
100%.
people, it's okay to do that, they're quite happy to do it?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I've got a few points on the back of what you just said. Yeah. So first of all, absolutely give them permission. I mean, the term safe space is such a big word at the moment, but yeah, it's a safe space to go and have some fun with it. You know, show that what I try to do with everything that I do is show that I do it, you know, that I've embraced it, and be an example, in the sense that, you know, you can have fun. And the term like professional, I've used the term professional weirdos because there's a professional element to it. You know, it's all well and good being creative, but if you can't bring it into a professional setting, then it's not worth anything, I suppose, in theory. But people hear the word professional and think that it means boring. It doesn't. You know, never has a CEO gone, I don't want to laugh today, or I don't want to smile today. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, it's about getting that resistance, about it's about giving them that safe space. And something that I've experienced myself with people like software designers, you know, who always think in tech, is that they don't think about the bits before the tech. They always think, okay, the solution is tech. That's not necessarily the case. You need to think about the customers, you said, and they don't. And there's an example. I think it was NASA, maybe. I can't remember which way around it was, but either NASA or the Russian space station were trying to cook up a way to allow astronauts to write in space. And so they developed a pen that wrote in space. Huge innovation. You know, how do you make ballpoints to write in space? And all the other team, I think it was the USA who were trying to create pens, and then the Russian team just used pencils. And it's like, oh, we've spent so much money on something that's really not that valuable. It's like taking that step back. So yeah.
And do you sort of advocate having fun at work? I mean, can you, in that sort of professional sense, can you get people to have fun at work? How do you encourage them to do that?
It's bringing the human part of it, really. Um, for me, it's with everything that I do. So, whenever I mean simple things like just saying please and thank you, and remember, like on social media, for example, reacting like a human being is one thing for me. As a human, you will bring fun to things. So you can have humor. The whole point is that you bring yourself into work. You are something that I say is, the reason that you're hired, theoretically at least, is because of your personality, your experience, and your worldview. Otherwise, they might as well replace you with some form of AI, because you might as well be a robot. So if you don't bring yourself into it, and that includes all of your hobbies, all of your interests, of course, it doesn't mean you have to share everything about yourself. You don't have to be a completely open book, but in the sense of bring yourself to it, because A, you'll enjoy it more, and B, you'll bring more value. So yeah, having fun at work is important, and not because you have to force fun. Forced fun is never fun. It's more of a case of allow yourself to have fun. So when you think about the stereotypical job roles, let's look at accountancy, for example. People think that sounds boring, or immediately start thinking about it being boring. But I've spoken to a few accountants recently. Something I'm trying to do at the moment is speak to all my LinkedIn contacts, and through that, I spoke to a few accountants, and they are so much fun. And it's like I've had chats with them, and it's a case of saying, do you use that humor at work? And two of them have said, yeah, that's all. That's the culture. That's what the culture's about. I'm like, wow, good. Whereas one person's like, no, I don't think it's quite right for the work setting. Like, who said? Who says so? Bring it. That's it. You're not going to get fired for having a laugh, and if you do, you don't want to work there. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I went up to Microsoft offices with a group of young people that I was doing a project with, and you hear it, don't you? You probably have been in these settings where places like Microsoft have the swings, they have the bean bags, they have all that kind of stuff, areas that you can kind of go and play, and things. Have you worked in places like that?
So when I worked at Camelot, for example, we had a table tennis table and a pool table, and I was really excited about the table tennis table because I'm obsessed with table tennis. And what tends to happen is the new people are excited about it, use it for 2 weeks, and then they forget about it. It's the same as getting sucked into the company culture. Whereas I was like, right, I'm playing this every week because I flipping enjoy it, and people would come and play me. And it became kind of like a thing, like a league table sort of thing. And so the way that I look at it is it has to come down from the top, essentially. The reason people aren't themselves at work is because there's kind of like a fear mentality. They worry that if they're themselves, they'll get fired or whatever. And that's because it doesn't come from down at the top. So what I would say is, if the people from the top do it from a personal, this is what I want it here because I like it, as opposed to we think we should put these swings in because it shows that we're fun. It's a materialistic thing. So all well and good doing it, just let them embrace it. I've got a friend, a connection, who runs a company called Fun at Work, I think they're called. Her name's Sunny, and she supplies offices with these fun things. And the difference with her is that they rotate the stuff, so it doesn't become old and stale. So every 2 months they'll replace a table tennis table with a basketball hoop or something, and then set up the social parameters around it as well, so the league table, so that people buy into it. And I think that's the key, is that the companies show that it's not only okay to do it, but it's encouraged to do it.
Yes.
It's not forced, but it's shown that you should feel comfortable to do it, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of my things as well, apart from creativity, is play, because I think what I do with what I do with the acting groups, so whether it's young people, whether it's adults, whether it's people with learning disabilities or not, it's about having fun and learning how to play. And certainly as adults, you forget how to do that, and we're not given the opportunity. We're kind of told to grow up, sort of do this, do that. And people forget how to play, but so much comes out of just giving yourself that headspace. And I think those CEOs that have the forward thinking to sort of include that in the workplace, then they're the ones that kind of know that in order to get innovation and creativity going, they need that kind of those sort of playful areas.
And it sounds to people who are listening to this, and I'd be surprised if people who weren't into creativity end up listening to this. It'd be great if they did. But if by some chance we managed to crack that, and someone does have a mindset that there is no fun in the workplace, creativity and play is all wishy-washy, heighty flighty stuff. Imagine how good it would be if your employees said that they enjoyed working. First of all, what an amazing thing to be able to say about your employees in your workplace. One. Two,
Yeah.
It is scientifically proven that when people enjoy their work, like their colleagues, and enjoy coming in, are more efficient and effective. So it doesn't have to be a high and flighty thing. It is literal. You can have a return on investment in it. You can see it. Also, retention as well. You'll have people leave. You'll have people stay, and you'll have people recommend your company to come and work for. So they're all these valuable things. So if someone's listening to it and isn't sure, like, there's scientific evidence for it. So it's worth investing in. Worth spending some time learning about it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I started this podcast, and the reason that creativity has become such a sort of a front forward thing for me is the fact that when I started my business 2 years ago and I went out on my own, I started all those networks, successful business women, and all those sort of those networks, and I was quite surprised that they were professional, but they were quite boring, because everybody was so intent on selling what they did that nobody was actually connecting. Nobody was actually having those conversations. And I thought, how fabulous would it be to find a network of creative people that could actually, collaborate, find collaborations, find creativity together. And I've been on many networking, and there have been some fabulous ones through lockdown that I've really enjoyed. But the Onion Hour, which I came along to, which you run along with, is it Stefano
Sarchi?
Yeah. So that was fun. That was creative. You were in a space full of people that actually are allowing themselves to do that. They've given themselves permission to have that hour and a half of fun and actually make more meaningful connections, I think. So how did that get started?
That's the key. Meaningful connections, because I went to a virtual networking thing myself about a week before we did the first Onion Hour, and I'm not going to name any names, but the networking group was really big, really well known, and I thought it was going to be an amazing event. I thought, I had high expectations because it was such a well known thing, and I sat there and I was thinking, this is dreary, this is so dull. And the most annoying thing for me was that it didn't have to be. This whole new world had opened up, and there's so much experience, so much opportunity to do some cool stuff with it. So when we were talking about developing the Onion Hour, I was like, this is a massive opportunity to have some fun with it. So background story behind Onion Hour. So I've known Stefano since university, actually. We met through we were doing some kind of society thing, and immediately he is one of the most energetic human beings you'll ever meet. I've just been kind of on the periphery of keeping in touch and stuff for the past few years, just watching what he's doing, because we get on, we resonate and stuff. And he is running a company called Epic Llama, and prior to lockdown, he was running it for quite a few years. I think he was quite successful with it, where people would essentially pay a certain amount of money, and then he would meet them in the airport, give them some tasks and challenges. And it would be a really fun, literal event. So they'll do like treasure hunts and various other things around the cities that they go to. What an incredible business, first of all. Absolutely love that. And Stefano, it makes so much sense what Stefano's doing. And then he sort of brought that over into the virtual world. He was doing quizzes, doing activities and things for companies. And we brought our heads together and thought, right, neither of us have experienced any really good virtual networking yet. We've got this experience of doing weird and wonderful things. Let's try it. And so we thought we'd bring our two worlds together and add some public networking opportunities. We'd done it within companies, but we hadn't brought it in the public sense. So we thought, great, well, let's bring some people together. Let's have some fun, showcase what we do, how we do it. And the Onion thing was just literally was the first thing that came to our mind. And then we've added puns along the way. So it's networking with layers. It's networking that won't make you cry. Networking meets not working. So yeah, that was the concept of it. And we just thought, you don't make connections with people when they're not shouting at you, but when they're talking at you about what they do. You
Yeah.
make connections by having in-jokes, by having things you can refer back to. And so, yeah, we wanted to create real connections. And I think that's what we've done with Onion now, at least in the first instance.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously you have the Facebook page as well, the Professional Weirdos Facebook group. So how long have you been, how long's that been up and running? Because I am part of that, but I don't know how it started or how that came from.
So that was on the back of that conversation I had with a friend who said that was weird. So originally, all I wanted to do was find other people who thought similar to me, i.e. differently, and achieve some form of success, whatever that meant to them. So I originally called the group "Is the World Strange or Am I?" based on a song by a favorite artist of mine called Cosmo Jarvis. Really good song. If anyone's listening and wants to have a bit of new music. And then people started to join, and I didn't really know what it was. It was it's just an explorative thing. And slowly but surely, as I spoke to more and more people who were coming from the corporate world and had various other experiences, I spotted this opportunity to develop this business about helping other people with being creative and stuff. And I was trying to create a term that explained who we were, what we did, and I can't quite remember the moment, but I came up with the term Professional Weirdos. And there's the meaning is kind of twofold. There's the weirdo who does things professionally. So, for example, a friend of mine called Rachel, she runs the London Loo Tour, which is a tour of all the public toilets around London, which is incredible. So when lockdown ends and you've got an opportunity, go along to it because it's fun and interesting and historical. Yeah. But she like really opened my eyes in the sense that she was doing something that she loved, which was very weird, but she would turn it into a profession. She was making money from it. That was great. So she is a professional weirdo. Then there are people such as myself and others who are weird, in inverted commas, and work in a corporate setting, shall we say, a professional setting. And they themselves are professional weirdos. And then there's me. I run Professional Weirdos. So I'm kind of like Professional Weirdo squared. And so, yeah, so the group is kind of like just trying to find like a sounding board who think about things similarly, perhaps want help in terms of embracing that weirdo, and as we touched on before, giving them permission to really do that. So yeah, that's what the group's all about, really.
Fabulous. Yeah. That's great. So tell me what you've been doing in lockdown though. Obviously you've got all this kind of stuff bubbling away, but in terms of work, what happened to you in lockdown? How did that work out for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So transparency wise, so whilst I've been building the business, I have had a job on the side as a digital marketing lecturer. So I was looking for something that wasn't an office job, something that gave me an opportunity to practice public speaking, running workshops, and also using the skills that I had. So I took a role as a digital marketing lecturer for an apprenticeship course. And what I wanted to do was help these young people. Basically, I wanted to give them the professional weirdo experience without giving them the professional weirdo experience, in that title. And so that's kept me afloat, both prior and during lockdown. So prior to lockdown, I was doing workshops 3 days a week in the real world with these people. And then since lockdown, they changed the business model slightly. Whereas we did live things, we're now doing recorded sessions. So I've had to change my approach in terms of recording stuff. So you can't do things on the fly when you're recording. You have to think about stuff. And just in terms of the Professional Weirdos aspect in all of this, so obviously there's a curriculum that I have to kind of meet in terms of the tick box exercise, but I kind of looked at it and went, to be a digital marketer, yeah, you have to know about SEO, you have to know about Google Analytics and stuff like that, but actually it's the mentality side of it that allows you to be a good digital marketer. Without that bit, without that, you won't be a successful digital marketer. So I teach that. So I've been doing that since lockdown. So that's kept me afloat while I build the business. But in terms of Professional Weirdos since lockdown, what I recognize is that I've managed to bring together like a roster of weird and wonderful people. So magicians, actors, Krav Maga instructors, knitting classes, art curators, and things like that. And what I recognize is that companies working remotely, one, they're not engaging with their teams. So you're missing out the social aspect, you're missing out the culture aspect. People are working from home. They might be working 9 to 5, but they've got blurred lines. They'll be eating lunch at their desk. They won't have a break, and they'll probably check their emails at 10 at night as well. And then you miss out on a creative element as well, in terms of people can't go out, experience things. People can't talk to people, that easily. So I brought together a new thing called Professional Weirdos Lunchbox, which is where I bring all these facilitators as an opportunity for companies to take about an hour out and have a session with them. So you could do a virtual art museum tour, you could have a knitting class, you could have a Krav Maga class, you name it. We've got a whole raft of things that people can tap into, and it's kind of like a eureka moment where people have gone, thank God for that. We can actually, give them a break. We can do some creativity. We can have some team stuff. So now we're being asked about Christmas parties as well, which is exciting. That's kind of like the answer in terms of what's happened to me, sort of lockdown, what's happened to the business during lockdown. And it's, for the past, since I kind of started Professional Weirdos, it's been like pushing a rock up a hill. In a good way, I see it as a positive challenge, talking about creativity, talking about thinking differently. And now COVID and lockdown and stuff has kind of forced people to do that, or at least be more open-minded. And so it's kind of like the gates are open. Here we go. It's time. So it's really exciting for me, in the sense of what opportunities sort of lie out there.
Yeah. And remind me to talk to you about the lunchbox, because I'm quite good at doing improvisation online.
I've already written your name down as a facilitator.
Right, yeah. And so what, you've been obviously very busy, and creativity is obviously, that's what you've been doing. But what have you been doing in lockdown for for your own well-being? Is there any part of that you kind of used to relax?
Yeah, so I mean that's a really good question, and it's something that a lot of people ask me. It puts a lot of pressure on, because when you pitch yourself as a creative person, people come to you for creativity, and like, oh, where's the next idea going to come from? And the honest answer is that the biggest thing that I do is make sure that I have a walk every day. Unfortunately, I have a dog called Rolex. That's who this is modelled off. And so he forces me to get out of the house, rain or shine. Fortunately, it's been quite nice weather recently. But something that I try and do more often than not, at least once a week, is go for a walk somewhere that I've not been before. Obviously, it's tough in lockdown. You can't go very far. But what I mean in terms of go somewhere you've not been before, I talk about going down a different path that you've not been. Because just that act alone opens your mind up to the idea of being open-minded and you not knowing what's going to come and stuff. So the amount of times that I've gone down a different street that I've not gone down before, I've walked past a million times, I'll go down there, and not done it. And then when I do, I'm like, oh, I can see my house from there. That's new. I've not seen that house before. Look at those flowers. Make sure you look up, because you don't spot all the things above your eye line. So it's tiny little things like that enable creativity. We think about creativity as painting, as playing music, as doing this, doing that. And yeah, all that is creative, absolutely. But you need to have that mindset beforehand to be able to do that. And so that's my little trick, in terms of getting my mind into a different gear. And then another thing that I do, and again, this probably isn't what people think about when they think of creativity and being open-minded, but your life currently is algorithms. The amount of stuff that gets served to you because of an algorithm, be it a Facebook page, be it LinkedIn, be it Twitter, be it your notifications, Netflix. So I just try and break the algorithm occasionally. So I will search something on Netflix, random word, and I'll watch what comes up. And sometimes it's terrible, sometimes it's great. But every single time, it's like I've watched something new, and I've peered into someone else's life. So two pieces of advice there is: one, go down a different path, literally and figuratively. And two, break that algorithm. Don't let the social media companies, don't let things dictate what you go look at.
I love that. I mean, I try and go for a walk every day, but I do the same. I do basically do the same walk. So yeah, I might have to find a different street. Yeah, that's brilliant. And I love breaking the algorithm, because that is so annoying, isn't it? You only literally have to say a word out loud, and then suddenly you get all these adverts coming your way. No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah. So tell me, just in the last sort of 5 minutes, tell me about your book, Get Started. So is that something that you've written? It sounds like you've always been a writer since you were at school. So was it inevitable that you would write a book?
That's funny, actually. I have never, and probably will never, consider myself a writer. But actually, it's funny because a lot of stuff that I have done does involve writing. I suppose the reason I don't consider myself a writer is because I've never really been trained in it, and that's my own mindset side of things. And I've never been good at grammar. I think I'm quite good at it now, and pulling words together. But thank you for that compliment. I'll take that as a compliment in terms of a writer. So the story behind Get Started was basically for years, since I started my first business, since I started being coming out my shell a bit more, people have asked me, how did you get started? Quite literally that question. How did you do it? How did you start a business? How did you do this, do that? And I would always offer them the logical answer. I would say, go to HMRC, do this, do that. I would give them the literal step. And they would kind of look at me like, that's not what I wanted, actually. You've not answered my question. And what they actually needed was like the mindset behind it. So for me, I always found it natural to go and do it. I was always an action taker. You know, I wouldn't think about things, I'd just go and do it, which to some extent, you know, isn't a great trait because there's no thought behind it. But to another extent, at least I'm going out there and learning. And so all I did was whenever I went out and was impulsive and did something and actually took an action, I'd write down that thought process. And so get started is like hints and quips and thoughts and stuff all pulled into one to basically get you started. It doesn't matter whether that's a diet, it doesn't matter whether that's a business. The book is all about those small, like incremental things that you can do to get yourself and get that ball rolling. I've had quite a few people come back to me and going, you know, the whole point. So the book in itself is an inception piece. I'd never done a book before. I'd never used Amazon, you know, self-publishing. And so I thought, right, I'm going to do it. And the book in itself is going to be like Inception. I've got it started. So that was the idea for the book. And I've had a few people come back to me and going, you know, whether it be homework. I've had some come to me and say, I actually started doing my homework after reading the book. Whether it's I've started a business. I've had a few people say that. And it's just people taking these first steps. You know, there's nothing particularly amazing about it. It's just encouraging people to go and realize that you have this big vision, this big idea, and that's the stuff that's stopping you from doing it. Yeah. Boil it down into the tiny little bits and take that little tiny step.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And again, maybe it is, we keep coming back to permission, you know, and it's just sort of, people have this idea of what they should do, don't they? They sort of think, I should be this, I should do this. And actually, yes. they forget about the little steps that it takes to get there.
Yeah, I kind of, coming back to the writer thing, you know, had I let that mentality of I'm not a writer get in my way, I wouldn't have done half the stuff that I'd done, you know, whereas I just put it out there. Yeah. And I suppose it's, you know, kids giving yourself that permission, and realizing that no one is going to give you that permission but yourself. That is the honest point of it, you know. I was talking to a friend the other day who was saying he's watching all his colleagues get awards for things like best X, best this, best that. And he said to me, he only just realized the other day that these people had put themselves forward for it. You know, he thought they were, you know, he didn't realize they were self-nominated. I went, that's the world. You've got to self-nominate for everything.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, that's great. Can you let us know where people can find you, Simon? Where, you know, where's the best place? Websites?
Yeah. So the website for Professional Weirdos is www. I don't think people say www anymore. Professionalweirdos.co.uk, basically. Then two of the best places to get me online are Facebook. So you can add me as a friend. That's absolutely fine with me. I'll have a chat with you. Join the Facebook group. Again, it's called Professional Weirdos. And on LinkedIn, it's Lord Simon Jacobs. And I would be happy to connect. And you'll be able to find my email and stuff as well on there.
Brilliant. And so what's for you next? What's coming up? What's the next thing?
So the next thing, so this is coming up to the end of November. We've got our next Onion Hour this week as we speak on the Wednesday. So if it'll be too late by the time this goes out, but we'll be doing them more regularly. So have a look for Onion Hour on LinkedIn or Facebook if you're able to come across it. We've got the Christmas parties offer. So if you hear this just in time, come and book a virtual Christmas party with us. And then if you hear this in the new year and you're interested in any virtual activity, such as the ones I listed, or some kind of consultancy around creativity, give me a call. That's for me, really. You know, that's the exciting stuff. Trying to bring Professional Weirdos into the mainstream.
Fabulous. Well, good luck with that, because you know I'm there with you. Let's bring Professional Weirdos to rule the world.
Exactly.
That's great. Oh, thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast, Simon. It's been brilliant. It's been a really, really lovely conversation. So thank you very much.
No, my pleasure, Jackie. Thank you very much. You know, I always enjoy podcasts full stop because I like having the conversations, but when there are really good questions like the ones you've challenged me with, they're even better. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
That's great. That's good to know from my point of view.